Notre Dame has not landed a single transfer commit through the first 3 days of the portal. But what does it actually mean? Today, we're breaking down why the Irish have taken a slower approach in the portal and whether that patience is going to pay off. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in to this crossover edition of Locked On Irish and The Portal. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, all thanks to your support. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm your host. I graduated from Notre Dame. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. Thrilled to have you here with me on Monday, January 5th, and thanks for getting your work week started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. And before we get rolling, please make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel or following along on your favorite podcast platform. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, I'm going to be joined by Locked On's recruiting and transfer portal insider Brian Smith, and we're going to dig into Notre Dame's quiet start to the transfer portal, their approach with visits, what they're prioritizing at wide receiver and along the defensive line. Then we're going to get into how they're handling quarterback depth and the kicker situation, and ultimately what a realistic portal finish looks like for the Irish. We've got a lot to get to, so let's dive in. All right, I am joined now by Brian Smith, Locked On's very own recruiting and transfer portal insider. Brian, we are 3 days into the transfer portal, and Notre Dame has not landed a single commit yet as of this recording, which is late on Sunday night. And not only that, the Irish lost arguably their top target in the portal, wide receiver Nick Marsh, to Indiana. And I think the lack of commits and the Marsh news has caused some understandable panic in the fan base. So from your experience covering the sport and covering the transfer portal, do you believe that angst is justified, or will Notre Dame's patience ultimately be rewarded?
I think it's a little bit of both. The timing of when guys commit is not important at the end of the day. However, the player they lost is a very significant one because Marsh is one of the best players in the portal, regardless of position. And finding guys that can play boundary receiver are not just rare, it's darn near impossible. Outside of guys like, Jeremiah Smith, there aren't many guys like him. There are just very few 6'3", 200-plus pound guys that make guys miss. And Notre Dame's not known to get those guys out of the high school ranks, as a Notre Dame grad yourself would know. So I get that. But as we were talking before the show, last year Notre Dame was in the playoffs, so guys didn't really transfer until after. So all the negativity was later. But it's that way for everybody. You get the guys going in the portal first. That's just the way it works. There's going to be more guys that get in for Notre Dame probably. That's just kind of the way it goes. But when they come, they will come fast, and they will be very, very key. Notre Dame has maybe 8 guys they'll take in the portal this year. They'll have one of the smallest lists, other than maybe Clemson. I don't even count them. I don't know if that's a bar that I want to use as a barometer here, but yeah, they took 4 last year, kind of low. But Notre Dame may not take much more than that because they don't need a lot. So it's not that big a deal about the number. It's about the quality. So I get the Nick Marsh thing. That's unfortunate for the Irish, but there are other guys, and I think they've got some pretty darn good young receivers who just need a chance to play too.
I do have more questions about wide receiver as a whole, but I think a lot of fans are wondering why Notre Dame didn't host any players this weekend, because the portal opened up on Friday, January 2nd, while a team like Indiana, who just played in the Rose Bowl on Thursday and has another playoff game coming up on Friday, they hosted a bunch of portal targets on Sunday, and they landed a few already, including Nick Marsh. Now, I should point out that by the time a lot of people are watching or listening to this on Monday, a lot of Notre Dame's top targets in the portal are going to be on campus. So do you have any insight into Notre Dame's approach when it comes to visits for portal guys? Because it's obviously a little bit different than having an official visit for a high school recruit.
Everybody's got their philosophy on this. We talk about this a lot during the high school season. I forget which weekend it was, maybe the 3rd weekend this year in the visit cycle. Notre Dame got all but one guy out of that visit weekend to commit, but it was later. Some schools, like Georgia, has a visit weekend very, very early in the recruiting cycle. Everybody's got a philosophy on it. Again, the timing doesn't matter as much, but Notre Dame fans, as somebody that has been around them a little bit in my lifetime, they like to complain a lot. They're very good at it. So, Tyler, I don't know if you've ever noticed that or not, But to put it mildly, I'm not real concerned about whether they brought in guys this weekend. As long as they get them between now and next weekend, like they're going to do it all at once, probably try to have everybody at one big gathering, maybe over 3-4 days. That'd be my guess for continuity. Yep. That's what they do with the high school kids. But I don't think it really matters when, and maybe they want some of the deals to all but be done other than the visit. And again, you're biased because you're a grad, but selling Notre Dame on a campus visit is not very hard. If they get the dollars and cents part down, at least close, the visit should be pretty easy. I don't think they're going to bring in anybody that they don't think they're pretty much going to get, and they're not going to waste their time. That's kind of the way they do it with high school recruiting too. So I'm okay with that.
It might be a little bit harder to sell on January 5th as opposed to like June 12th. The weather is a little bit different in South Bend that time of year, but I think the bigger talking point is obviously the dollars and cents, like you mentioned. And if there is a common thread between the way that Notre Dame is approaching these visits with portal guys compared to high school recruits, is they're trying to get a lot of their top guys on campus at the same time. And that obviously worked really well for them in June. We'll see how it works for them in the transfer portal. But going back to wide receiver, with Marsh off the board, Notre Dame is now pursuing wide receivers Ian Strong from Rutgers, Reed Harris from Boston College, Isaiah Townsend from Iowa State, and possibly Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, who is actually a former Notre Dame commit. Who stands out to you from that group, and does anyone truly compare to what Marsh could have been?
It's hard to put it into perspective because high school compared to college is different. But Canyon was a guy that I was in love with out of high school because he can fly. And I'm extremely partial to the Peach State in terms of high school recruiting. For those who don't know, I currently live in Auburn, Alabama, and I'm close to there. And I go to a lot of games and camps and combines in Georgia. And it is currently number one in the country for players per capita to this thing they call the National Football League. So I would go Canyon is most likely, but like Georgia Tech's offense, we don't know exactly what he can do. And he had like 4 touchdowns last year, et cetera. But what would he have done in an offense that had a veteran quarterback and an offensive line that pass protected a little bit better and a quarterback that had a shoulder? No offense to Haynes King, but he's been destroyed. They only threw it so often. I think that's a guy that's an NFL player. He's the closest, but because of the offense that he's in and he's a younger player, we don't know exactly what he's capable of. But Notre Dame's very familiar with him. That would be the one I would look at. The speed to go deep. He's a guy that was coveted by a lot of programs, but I don't know if there's anybody that's exactly Marsh because of the production he had. So it kind of depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I hear that. I think Notre Dame is really looking for that big body boundary who can go out there and make contested catches like Malachi Fields did. Ian Strong is good at that at Rutgers. He had good numbers with the Scarlet Knights, but the thing that stands out to me with Strong is he had 2 total catches for 17 total yards against their 2 toughest opponents, Ohio State and Oregon. And yeah, you can make the case that he didn't have a solid quarterback throwing him the ball, but he really put up a lot of numbers on bad teams. And then there's Reed Harris from Boston College, who's interesting because I remember when Notre Dame was getting ready to play them this fall, I was watching some of their games and I was like, wow, this Reed Harris guy is pretty good. And then he ended up getting the better of Leonard Moore on that one play, although I think Leonard Moore might have just tripped and fallen. But either way, Reed Harris scored a touchdown on Leonard Moore. There's not that many guys who can say that. So if it's not Canyon, because I think right now we're kind of looking at the connection with Notre Dame and Canyon just from the recruiting days. I don't know if Canyon is set to visit Notre Dame this week, but it does seem like Harris and Strong are legitimate possibilities. If you had to pick one, who would you pick?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Maybe it's just me, but I've always just had no love for Rutgers. I don't trust anything from their numbers. Like they've always just been.
You don't believe Greg Schiano? You're not chopping wood?
Not chopping wood with their passing game. Okay, let's just go with that. They were better. I'll give them credit. They did throw the ball pretty well for part of this year, but as they got into the season further and teams saw film, they struggled again. I'll go Reed Harris, but it's not by a strong confidence level. There's nobody on the board at receiver publicly. I'll get into that in a second, but I'm like, oh, this is a no-brainer. If Notre Dame gets this guy, it's plug and play. He's an NFL player. But let me throw out a little something here. Not going to name the player, but I was given a number today on a kid who's in the portal going to make a decision that's very inexperienced. He's going to get $1.6 million for when I'm told to go to another school. It's not Notre Dame involved. That's a 6'3" receiver. Size matters, and some of these kids got some of these deals going on behind closed doors. They're not actually in the portal. So don't go by what's just on the board at On3 or 24/7 or anything else. Notre Dame could be involved with somebody that's not public. Trust me, that's going on a lot right now.
I should add on the point I made about Strong, like he still produced at a high level. He had 52 catches, 762 yards, and 5 touchdowns this past season. So would you have liked to see him do a little bit better against Oregon and Ohio State and feel a little bit better about that potential acquisition? Sure, but he did go out there and produce for Rutgers last year. And last question on the receivers. Let's say Notre Dame adds a player like Townsend, and they just don't add a surefire starter at wide receiver in the portal, and instead they lean on guys that are already in the room. How would you evaluate the wide receivers as a whole, with Jordan Faison and Jane Greathouse coming back, and a bunch of young, talented, but still unproven options?
I'm not as worried about wide receiver from that perspective because A, the running back room is very good. B, the tight end room, if it ever becomes healthy for Notre Dame, very big question, is pretty good. And then C, like they've got enough guys that had to kind of wait that were talented. Like it's just a matter of which one it is. Somebody just by logic here is going to kind of break through, but you're looking at this from getting as many bullets in the gun as possible. And it's never going to hurt to get a guy like the kid from Rutgers, et cetera, or Harris, whatever, to come in and push the pile, and whoever wins, as they say, that's the person that gets the job. But if they didn't add another piece, or if they just added a guy that's going to be number 2 on the depth chart, I think they'd still be fine because they have so many pieces. Watch out for the tight end room, though. If some of those guys get healthy, that'll kind of mitigate part of it as well.
Wide receiver gets the headlines, but Notre Dame's biggest need is in the trenches. And coming up next on this crossover edition of Locked On Irish and the Portal, we're going to shift to the defensive line and what new D-line coach Charlie Partridge is walking into right away. That's next. Thank you again for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you have not already, make sure you check out our brand new Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Irish and the Portal. Same show, same schedule, just no ads, and it works on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. If you listen every day, it's a really easy upgrade. For this show, go to lockedonirish.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel is giving fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited-time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. When you open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour, it always brings something new, from boosts to bonuses and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes, and the timing is perfect, right before the games and right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to this crossover edition of Locked On Irish and the Portal. Brian, we know that adding a wide receiver is important, but defensive tackle is by far the biggest need for the Irish in this cycle. And now, with Al Washington moving to coach linebackers and Notre Dame hiring Charlie Partridge from the Indianapolis Colts, how would you describe Partridge's reputation and what he brings to the table right away?
If there's anything else that we talk about today that is more positive than Partridge coming to Notre Dame, I will be shocked. This is one of the guys that is the godfather of the pass rush. And if you're a Notre Dame fan for any extent over the last 30 years, you know that that is not the area where Notre Dame excels. And I'm being extremely kind. This guy found a bunch of 3-star kids that nobody else wanted, took them to Pittsburgh, and they were constantly in the top 20 in sacks. What is he going to be able to do with the kind of talent that Notre Dame signs in their front seven? Not just D-line, because Notre Dame's multiple with who they blitz. They blitzed in a million different ways anyway. When he was at Pittsburgh, he did some of that with the Colts this year, et cetera. He is tremendous with one-on-one, attacking styles of defense, not just from the edge, but the blitzes and when you do them, fire zone. This is a tremendous hire by Notre Dame. And it's the most important thing today, way more than the transfer portal, because he will maximize a bevy of different players. And there'll be probably a couple of guys that didn't get a ton of love from fans, especially because they maybe didn't do a bunch. He will take a few of those kids and make them better. This is an incredible hire by Marcus Freeman and the Irish.
For people unfamiliar, Partridge and Ash used to work together back in the day, and Partridge was actually JJ Watt's coach back at Wisconsin. And as you and I talked about earlier in the day, Brian, Partridge spent quite some time in Pittsburgh working for none other than Pat Narduzzi. As a matter of fact, he was with the Panthers starting in 2017 as the D-line coach, and then from 2018 through 2023, he was their D-line coach and co-defensive coordinator, and a lot of Pittsburgh fans wanted him to get that promotion to be the full-time DC. He didn't get it. He went to the Colts for 2 years, and now he's back in the college ranks. So if nothing else, like everything you said about Partridge is great, it's exciting, but the fact that Pat Narduzzi is probably really pissed off that Partridge is not only back in college, he's going to be coaching for Notre Dame. That's a big enough win for me in this entire cycle.
Something tells me that you're never going to go to one of Narduzzi's Christmas parties. Narduzzi hates Notre Dame. That's not a news flash. And most coaches either love or hate Notre Dame because they got to recruit against them and they lose and all that stuff, or they've coached with Notre Dame and they like it. I think it's hilarious. And Notre Dame is going to play against Pittsburgh. It'll probably bother him, which obviously makes you happy. Probably a lot of Notre Dame fans happy as well, and that's cool. But I think more than anything else, he's going to be mad because he knows the guy can coach. And right. Notre Dame oftentimes probably didn't utilize the D lineman in the last 15 years or whatever since he's been coaching against Notre Dame, whether it was at Michigan State or now as the Pittsburgh head coach. And Maximize, he knows whether he wants to admit it or not. Notre Dame's going to have somebody like Traore may have his stock go up for the NFL draft in 2027 more than any other player in the country because of Partridge being a part of Notre Dame's staff. So, yeah, I think it's kind of funny too.
He's walking into an interesting situation because you mentioned Traore is a beast off the edge. I think a lot of people are really excited about Bryce Young's potential, but Notre Dame is going to be without Gabriel Rubio, Jared Dawson, and Donovan Heinisch next season at defensive tackle, and possibly Jason Onye. We don't know his future yet. Notre Dame's still trying to get another year of eligibility approved for him. And then also, Armel Mukum just entered the transfer portal. So Notre Dame is set to host Xavier Gilliam from Penn State, potentially Mateen Ibarogba from Wake Forest, and Horace Lockett from UCF, 3 defensive tackles. If you were building the ideal portal haul for Notre Dame at defensive tackle, which 2 of those players would you take and why?
I think the obvious answer there is Gilliam is number 2 because I think his upside with Partridge, for those who don't know, he's a one gap and go, downhill, let's attack, 7, like bear fronts, all that stuff. Gilliam is a guy that can play nose guard for you. He could probably 2-gap a little bit if you really needed him to, but he can get up the field. He's a young guy. He's got 3 years of eligibility from Penn State. So that's an interesting one. And like the kid from Wake Forest is just proven he would be an instant starter. So that's the perfect combination. Guy with a high upside with multiple years of eligibility, then the kid that might be your best interior defensive lineman right away. The other kid from UCF is massive, and there's chance for him, but I would imagine somebody like Kirby Smart would be looking at him, and I think he's an Atlanta kid anyway. He's like 350, more 2-gap, more power. He's a little bit raw, but, man, he's massive. Like it'd be great if Notre Dame got all 3, to be honest, but I don't know what they're trying to spend. I don't know what everybody's trying to look at. And again, the kid from UCF, he's not great, but you can't teach that frame. So it depends on your defensive scheme, and only a handful of teams really run a zero tech. That's not Notre Dame's bag usually. And adding Partridge, I kind of doubt they're going to be 2-gapping very much. So I'm going to go with the kid from Wake. I can't pronounce his name. I'm not going to try, but then Xavier Gilliam from Penn State.
Horace Lockett is 6'6", 355 pounds. So that is one large man. But the thing about defensive tackle is that outside of quarterback, there might not be a more expensive position in the entire transfer portal. Can you share some insight into the going rate of a talented defensive tackle in this day and age?
I can give you a couple stories, both portal and from high school. Like there's a couple years ago when the portal was just starting to get rolling and the prices went way up. There was a kid in the SEC that came off the bench, played, but came off the bench. A few of the schools that hint really loathe one another in the Big Ten. I'm sure you can kind of figure out which 2 I'm referring to. Went after him and offered him $500,000 to play, and he was just a guy that played some, just because he was a 350-pound guy. Today, that'd be $1.5 million. Like the portals went nuts because everybody's fearful that they're going to get fired if they don't win right now. So Like D-line, there just aren't many good players that get in. The kid from Wake Forest, he's pretty good, but he's not somebody that like Kirby's banging down his door at Georgia. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you take him, but they're just elite players just aren't there. For whatever reason, linemen don't transfer as much. So the prices just get inflated something crazy. Like the same level at corner, the same player, basically just different position, maybe half, and it's still a critical position, but you're not going to spend anywhere near as much. Just supply and demand. As for recruiting, there are kids now getting $2 million out of high school per year, like the elite kids. They're D linemen. Like Notre Dame doesn't like this, but eventually they're going to have to jump in that too if they're going to get the elite D lineman out of high school. Portal is a little different, but it's gotten to be pretty gross.
After Josh Burnham entered the transfer portal, Notre Dame is looking to add another defensive end. They're going to host Jalen Thompson from Michigan State this week. Is there anything that stands out about his game to you, and does he fit what Notre Dame typically looks for off the edge?
He's got a little bit of pop to him. It's funny. I do the podcast with Locked On Spartans, and like Matt Sheehan's one of the funniest guys on planet Earth, but he bleeds green and he woes their pass rush. But this was the one guy that was at least halfway decent, and he didn't get any help. I think he can kind of fit Notre Dame because he's got enough size. He's over 250, but he's not just like a bulky big guy that's just going to be a run stuffer only. He'll be able to rush the passer a little bit. His stats were okay, but again, they didn't have enough players around him. Just being honest, nothing against the Spartans, where you could chip him, run away from him, double him, do whatever, and his stats aren't going to show it, but he has the frame and a little bit of experience playing that there's a chance. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Most important thing today is Partridge is coming to Notre Dame. That's the kind of kid that his stats at Michigan State, just okay. They could double at Notre Dame because of the style of the defense, and you can't focus on, like, if anybody's going to get focused on, it's Traore. I think that's pretty safe estimation. But if he's getting chipped and doubled and people are going to float their protection that direction, everybody else is singled. This is a kid that could eat, as they say. And you're going to have Bryce Young over there too, rotating. He won't be focused. Like if Notre Dame got him, he could be a really big addition.
Another edge who hit the portal on Sunday is a name most Notre Dame fans are familiar with. Keon Keeley, a former 5-star recruit who is committed to Notre Dame, decommitted, went to Alabama, although he has not played much for the Crimson Tide over the past 3 years. Do you expect Notre Dame to even kick the tires there, or is that a situation they're better off avoiding? Because personally, I don't think he's worth it anymore.
He played pretty well down the stretch. He finally kind of hit that stride at the end of this year and started playing some. And I know Keon, I lived in Tampa when he was there. He's a good kid and everything. I don't know if you could really create a defensive end physically any better than what he was built. He's kind of the small forward that's added some weight and just freaking length and all that. If you don't kick the tires, I think it's a mistake. The problem I would worry about Notre Dame is he's been at Alabama for 3 years. Where is he academically? Because we both know undergrad transfer is a little iffy. So that's probably the bigger holdup. But I think you would have to take him because Notre Dame, especially with all the players like Burnham, et cetera, leaving, there just aren't a lot of options here. It goes back to what we were talking about. Defensive tackle is worse, but DN's not exactly great. There's a lot of guys in the portal, but how many do you really want? Keeley would be the most physically gifted probably of anybody in the portal. How motivated he is, I don't know. But again, I'll trust Partridge if you get Keeley on campus.
So that's the state of the defensive line, but Notre Dame's portal work does not stop there. And coming up on this crossover edition of Locked On Irish in the Portal, we're going to hit the rest of the board: nickel, quarterback depth, the kicker situation that everyone is worried about, and how many players will Notre Dame actually add by the time the portal window closes. That's coming right up. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like college football season, the tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout, but that's why Gametime gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly easy to use. I went from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. I loved being able to see the view from from my seat before buying, so I knew exactly what I was getting. The zone deal stood out. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. Knowing prices include all fees up front makes the whole process stress-free. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. All right, back here with this crossover edition, and Notre Dame missed on its top nickel target, Jontez Williams from Iowa State, who actually committed to USC before making his visit to Notre Dame. So, Brian, do you think nickel was a one-player pursuit and they were just looking at Jontez Williams, or do you expect Notre Dame to pivot to another option at that position?
Definitely pivot. They need experience there just to kind of make sure that if it doesn't end up being one of the young guys definitively getting the job, they've got another option. And B, if there's an injury, you still need more bullets in the gun. So I would imagine Notre Dame would be okay with as many talented players as they have. They'd figure it out. But you've got an entire offseason. If you can mold one guy, obviously Jontez is really, really good. If you can mold one guy that's maybe a tier below him as the backup, at least, again, sprained ankle, whatever, whoever ends up being, Dallas Golden or whoever it ends up being, I don't care. You've got to have a backup there. So they would probably rather have at least one experienced guy. I have no idea who it will be, but there's just so many more DBs in terms of quantity. It's not like the D-line situation where there's just a handful and then the fall off is massive. They'll be fine there.
Yeah, I think for some added context here, Notre Dame was looking at Jontez Williams at nickel, but he played primarily outside corner for Iowa State his entire career. And it's my understanding that USC told him, hey, you can go play nickel at Notre Dame, or you can play outside field boundary corner at USC. And that's what he opted to go with. But there might not have been a single person on earth who was higher on Dallas Golden as a high school recruit than you, and I totally agreed with you, and I thought he did pretty well as a true freshman, especially considering he switched his position during the season and had to fill in for Devontae Smith at nickel for the Irish this past year. What did you make of Dallas Golden's freshman year and how he projects in the future at Notre Dame?
Well, I remember seeing him. I met him through Keon, ironically, because they played at the same high school in Berkeley Prep in Tampa. And when he was a freshman, I asked Keon, I said, who's next up? And he pointed over to the skinny kid over here, and it ended up being Dallas Golden. And he's like, that's next guy here at Prep. And I'm like, okay. So I followed him after Keely left, and he basically handed them into a state championship against a team that had 20 kids who went to play college ball by being a running back. And when they needed him to play receiver, he could. When they needed him to play corner, he could. It didn't matter. He was always the best player on the field in Florida, by the way. So I knew he was going to figure it out. And he told me he wanted to play nickel at Notre Dame. And whatever happened freshman year is fine, but that was the long-term goal anyway, because he wanted to play the harder spot. And for those that don't know, nickels are possible because you don't know who's going to line up in front of you to play. But mentally, he likes that challenge. And it's probably why he went to Notre Dame anyway. It takes a little bit different kind of athlete to take on the academic and social rigors that, Notre Dame has, and he loves it. So I think he'll be fine if he's the starter. Again, you just need bullets in the gun when he comes out of the lineup, because I don't know too many guys that really want to play nickel, because you're going to get exposed sometimes no matter what.
Notre Dame wants an experienced backup behind CJ Carr, and this was always going to be a difficult proposition because you're going to have to bring a guy from the transfer portal who is not going to start his first year, and you're also going to have two true freshmen in Noah Grubbs and now Teddy Gerard competing for that spot as well. And then I don't know what the future holds for Blake Heber, but they're interested in Braden Atkinson from Mercer, who threw for over 3,600 yards as a true freshman for the Mercer Bears. What would Atkinson add to the quarterback room behind CJ Carr?
Experience. I know hardly anything about Mercer. I saw him play a little bit, just a couple of times in passing. But it's not like I was scouting the kid. So, I can go watch some clips or whatever. You got to watch game film to really know. But if you threw for 3,600 yards at any level, you have to at least be decent. So I don't know what they're trying to do. If that's a kid that really thinks he can come in and start, I have no idea. After CJ leaves, I'm not saying he's being out CJ Carr just for full autonomy. But if he's got extra years of eligibility, that brings in other questions. So I was just with Teddy Gerard, the Under Armour game. He made one of the best throws I've seen all year at any level for a touchdown with a guy on his tail. going against his body, throwing a bomb. So, like, they've got guys coming in that can play, but they're all young. So I get it. But anything that you do, there's somebody who's going to transfer. That's just the way it is. I've had that conversation with Teddy. I said, one of you guys is going to leave in a little over a year. I don't know who it's going to be, but whoever doesn't win the job is probably going to transfer. That's just how it works. So if you need to bring in somebody else, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to put a really good quarterback on the field. And CJ's probably going to leave after this next year. So if this kid can do something and he's willing to wait his chance to play, he's the exception, because not many kids will wait even 10 seconds at quarterback. They are the most impatient players on planet Earth. So I get it.
Right. And Atkinson actually won the Jerry Rice Award, which is awarded to the best freshman in FCS. So that's pretty good. He's also getting interest from Syracuse, Boston College, Baylor, and Cal. So we'll see if he's willing to head to Notre Dame and wait around for a year, or just wait for that one play where Notre Dame might need their backup quarterback. But hey, speaking of quarterbacks, how do you like Kenny Minchie's fit at Nebraska now that he's committed there?
I think it's great. Nebraska, I'm not picking on Raiola, but he's not a statue, but he's cement that's getting pretty dry. So he just couldn't move much, and Minchie's a freak. I think they need a little something extra to make that offense dynamic, and Kenny's very intelligent. Above the shoulders, he's the kind of guy that coaches like, because he's good on the board. He understands concepts and coverages. I think he'll go in there and he'll do well. I'm not saying he's going to light it up, because they got Barney and a few other guys that are young players that are good. They don't have Jeremiah Smith out there. I don't even know if they got Jordan Faison, but they've got enough tools, and it'd be nice to see Nebraska get to a decent bowl game. I think they got a pretty good head coach, but good for Kenny. Like, he's just stuck in a bad spot. Like, he wanted to be at Notre Dame, just didn't work out. So he's got a couple years of eligibility left, and he'll probably make really good money there. They've got a ton of cash in Nebraska, and he's going to be the guy. So I think it'll be a good fit. He'll run a little RPO, and he could spin it.
We've talked a little bit about the tight end position, and Brody Foley, the tight end from Tulsa, is going to be on campus at Notre Dame this week. He started out his career at Indiana, but he barely played, so then he transferred to Tulsa. And in one season, he was really productive at 7 receiving touchdowns. They even used him in the Wildcat a little bit, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns. If he were to commit to Notre Dame, do you see him as the starting tight end, like their tight end 1, or is this more of a backup option for Cooper Flanagan, assuming he's able to get healthy here pretty soon?
I think you just answered your own question with the question, how healthy
is, yeah.
Look, I don't know what it is. I can't even blame you for this, Tyler. They've had more tight end injuries in the last 2-3. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, like, think about this. He was hurt for 3 freaking years, pretty much. And then this year, I mean, he finally played, and he's really good. Like, you look at him and you say, God created him a little different. Like, he has muscles on muscles. And when he finally stayed healthy, he was very productive when they threw him the ball. But everybody gets hurt at Notre Dame that plays tight end. It is a curse all of a sudden.
I know. Poor Kevin Bauman, man. I've never seen anything like that. Every other week.
It's just
terrible.
So I think they're pretty good there, but their most talented tight ends, Premer, the kid that's coming in from camp, like, he is – it's comical. He's the one Teddy Gerard's going to room with, by the way, at Notre Dame. Like, he makes guys miss in space, and he's 6'5", 6'6". Tyler, that's not normal. I know they don't like playing freshmen, but that is a 3-and-out NFL player, assuming he doesn't get the same disease the other tight ends have at Notre Dame, and that's the injury bug. Like, seriously, it's insane how many guys have been hurt at Notre Dame. So the young Flanagan, in addition to the older one, like, those 3 are pretty good. I think this guy will be a little bit better as a blocker. He's got to prove it to me at the Notre Dame level when they're playing Miami, when they're playing SMU, when they're playing Wisconsin, Michigan State teams. You got some bigger size. Red zone, let's be honest. Even with Jeremiah Love and Jaron Price, they stunk in short yard. They weren't bad. They were horrific. And that's because they didn't have any healthy tight ends, and they're trying to block guys on the edge with receivers. I still say they should have put in another lineman and just used him as a tight end or an H-back, but that's me. Now they're going to have a guy that's 250. If they get him, like, that could be your answer. If he just plays 15% of the snaps, but he's the guy in 13 personnel and 12 personnel on the goal line, he's worth the scholarship just for that. He didn't have to catch pass. Like, think about how bad some of those attempts were on the edge to block. They were comical. So, yeah it's important.
Notre Dame is obviously in dire need of a kicker. If you believe the message boards, Notre Dame allegedly had their guy, but that player decided to stay put at whatever school he's currently at. If the Irish end up rolling with Eric Schmidt again next year, will you be able to watch? Would that be the biggest miss of this cycle?
I don't know if it'd be the biggest miss, but you just I say this all the time in recruiting, and I do it intentionally. I cannot stand scouting kickers. I will never scout kickers. I don't know much about them. I don't want to. The way they think, the way they act, I want nothing to do with it. And that kid's leg is massive. Schmidt, he can put it through a wall, but you got to be accurate. Is he ready mentally to take that step? Because they're going to give him all the pieces that he needs in terms of who to go work with in the offseason, all those things. But ultimately, kicking is not a whole lot about coaching. Once you get to this level, you already got most of it. There might be a little variant, but his leg is insane. He has an NFL leg, period. Are you ready to roll the dice with a kid that was pretty bad as a freshman? Not bringing anybody, not even an FCS kid? I would not be. They've got to get somebody to at least make him feel threatened, in my opinion, because competition creates greatness.
All right, ultimately, when it's all said and done, how many players do you expect Notre Dame to add in this cycle?
6 or 7. I think that would be about right. If it gets up to 10, it means a couple extra guys may come out. That may be, instead of maybe it's 8. They need 2 D tackles, kicker, check please. I definitely want to see a kicker, 1 receiver, running backs possible. They probably don't need an offensive lineman. They're about the only team in the country that does a D1. Notre Dame's recruiting on the offensive line is truly insane. After that, tight end 1. It's pretty obvious they're trying to get one. They've talked about running back a little bit. It's just there's no spot they definitely need. Safety, probably not. They could take a nickel. They don't have to. They are in a very advantageous spot. This is a top 5 roster for next year because they have so many guys back. But the spots that they're missing, D tackle, that's a little iffy. The end, it'd be nice to have one. They're not easy to get. And then they don't need a receiver. They need a boundary if they truly go get one. That would be ideal. But they do need somebody that's at least a playmaker. So they got some interesting spending options here because those spots are rather pricey. I'm curious to see how much Notre Dame goes all in on the big fish. It's not the total number that I'm concerned about. They get 3 really good players out of those group. This should be a top 5 team next year.
Brian, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time, and be sure to check out the portal for all the latest news and updates during one of the craziest couple weeks of the year in college football. It is a must-watch or listen for every college football fan, especially this time of year. So thanks again, man, and we'll talk again soon once all this craziness is behind us.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. And if you enjoyed today's show, make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow the show on your preferred podcast platform, like the video, and leave a rating and review. You know the drill, but it really helps us grow. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Irish ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonirish.supercast.com to join the club. I'm going to be back right here tomorrow with the latest updates on the transfer portal and hopefully a couple of commits to talk about. I'll see you then.